You guys remember Leon Edwards? It feels like everyone has quickly moved on from Leon Edwards. Typically when champions, especially champions who defended their belt multiple times, lose the belt, everyone wants to see the rematch to the contender they lost to, or at the very least want to see the former champion forge a path back to the belt. Volkanovski, though he has lost bad and is 36 years old, has a lot of the community supporting a fight with Diego Lopez to possibly get the belt back, or even just a straight up rematch with Ilya to have one more attempt at the belt. For a long time, fans have supported Charles Oliveira's path towards getting the belt back, and an Islam rematch was already in the works at one point, and now with another win over Michael Chandler, with the support of the community as well, it looks like Charles should be next in line after the Islam Arman rematch. And even if fans aren't immediately calling for a rematch for the former champion, in the case of Sean O'Malley, a lot of people at least like the idea of Sean having a lot of fun striking fights with possibly Corey Sandhagen, Petr Yan, and run that back, or I can even see a fun fight with him and Figgy. But what are the fans excited for when it comes to Leon? Yeah, in the case of the welterweight division, it already seems like that weight class has quickly moved on from Leon. And quick is an understatement here. Dana and the UFC were really quick to book up Bilal and Shavkat, and it seemed like no one had a problem with this, and equally, it also seemed like no one was calling for the immediate rematch between Leon and Bilal. And when Bilal got injured and Shavkat was without an opponent, it wasn't the former champion they called up, it was the former champion they called up first. And then when Kamaru didn't take Shavkat on short notice, justifiably so, they called up Ian Gary. Leon wasn't the first option, nor was he even the second option, and honestly, without the JDM injury, Shavkat and JDM would have definitely been the fight to make for a title eliminator, so really Leon was probably the fourth option, if that. I think a lot of fans have moved on completely from Leon Edwards, and it's pretty clear that the UFC has too, with Bilal, Shavkat, JDM, and Ian Gary now in the picture. But how did Leon, who got the belt with one of the most iconic and legendary head kicks in the promotion's history over one of the most dominant champions in that division, a champion who defended his belt twice and up until that point was on a 13-fight unbeaten streak, become forgotten in a blink of an eye? Of course, firstly, we have to talk about his fighting style. Despite Leon being a striker and having one of the sickest head kick KOs in existence, the guy is boring 90% of the time. Everyone calls Bilal boring, which is fair. I mean, in Bilal's 19 fights in the UFC, he only has 3 finishes in his 15 wins, putting him at a 20% finish rate, which, yeah, is pretty bad. But Leon isn't too far ahead. Leon, with a similar sample size of 18 fights in the UFC, only has 4 finishes in his 14 wins. So with one less fight, but with one more finish, Leon only has a 28% finish rate, which is pretty terrible as well. A lot of people also call Colby Covington boring, but the guy with 16 fights in the UFC has 5 finishes in his 12 wins, so he is sporting a 41% finish rate, which looks monstrous in comparison to these two guys. And sure, just because a fight ends in decision doesn't mean the fight was necessarily boring. Petr Yan's last 6 fights have ended in decision, but all of them were pretty crazy in wins and losses, and in most, it was Petr pushing the pace and making the fight really interesting, especially with his insane striking and high-paced combinations. But Leon, we're talking low output, singular kicks, and practically zero risk-taking, which is sure to put anyone to sleep. Practically all of Leon's fights are just him defending a takedown, then going right back to work with a jab, a teep, or one leg kick. No combinations, practically no power, and really no excitement. He really just fights just good enough to be better than his opponent to outpoint them and get the decision. And even though for the most part it looks like he's way more skilled than his opponents, he never really looks to make a statement. Even with his legendary KO over Kamaru Usman, it really wasn't a result of him pushing the pace, it was Kamaru letting his foot off the gas. Izzy was notorious for this when he was champ, and this was really the start of why everyone started to hate on him when he was champion. But at least Izzy was exciting on his come up. Leon Edwards throughout his whole entire career has always been like this, and sure, he is very talented, very skilled, and his takedown defense and anti-wrestling has improved, but man, there is nothing to note when it comes to his fighting style. And when it comes to his personality, yeah, let's just say he was riding that headshot dead thing a little too long. And when he wasn't spamming that one line, he was spamming gibberish. Most of his interviews or press conference appearances are honestly pretty unintelligible. He mumbles on top of having a thick accent and doesn't have any charisma at all. Say what you want about Izzy, but as cringe and hateable as he can be, he still has a very polarizing and distinct personality you can't take your eyes off of, and I would much rather watch someone throw a temper tantrum and cry than hear Leon mumble for 30 minutes at a press conference and then get the crowd to yell headshot dead. And it was even worse before he had the headshot dead bit. During the come up of Leon Edwards, he was also probably one of the most clowned on fighters because of this one legendary clip here where the ultra exciting Jorge Masvidal at the time delivered the infamous 3-piece and a soda combination and bitched Leon, ultimately leading to Jorge not just getting 1 but 2 title shots before Leon. And I've said this before and I'll say this again, to truly succeed in the fight game, you either have to have an exciting personality or you have to have an exciting fighting style. And unfortunately for Leon, he has neither. And on top of all of this, the dude doesn't even have the dog in him. Okay, sure, he doesn't have the most exciting fighting style, and maybe he doesn't have charisma or personality, but at least look like you want to do everything in your power to become or stay champion. I, like many, just hate the attitude he brings when he's down in a fight. Say what you want about Bilal and how he is equally as boring as a fighter and a personality, but you can't deny that he brought it that day and really looked like he wanted to be champion and earn that shit by being a relentless dog. Meanwhile, Mr. Headshot Dead was dropped consistently on his head, and in many exchanges where Bilal had his back, it really just looked like he gave up. They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and this one mumbled a lot more than 1,000. Even his coach wasn't having it, trying to recreate that perfect kick by motivating a self-defeating Leon again, but of course we all know lightning never strikes twice in the same spot. And speaking of that kick, up until that point, Leon had that same attitude of feeling sorry for himself and looking like he accepted defeat before the fight was over. Leon is such a frustrating fighter to watch in a win or a loss. In wins, it really feels like he can do way more and truly dominate his opponent and probably even seek a finish if he wanted to, but it's clear that he likes to play it safe and point fight to a win. Especially after the Nate Diaz moment, I don't think Leon can trust his chin and really put himself in the fire to get a finish, so is again super content at keeping range and picking shots. And of course, in a loss, sometimes it feels like he gives his opponents the fight in the second round. If he just gets wrestle fucked like he did in the Bilal fight, or the first and really most of the second Kamaru Usman fight, he just mentally checks out for the rest of the match. So yeah, with a boring style, very little personality, and about 0% dog in him, it's pretty clear to see why no one is really talking about a second title run for Leon Edwards. And with the way the Leon Edwards era ended, it really got me thinking, we really do have to put respect on Kamaru Usman's name. During Kamaru's title run, he still had a boring label perception too. He mostly had wrestling heavy decisions coming up the rankings and was pretty cringy when it came to shit talk, but man, he really transformed into a killer once he became champion. First he went to war with Colby and KO'd him late. Granted, had a boring fight with Jorge, but then KO'd Gilbert Burns, brutally KO'd Jorge in the rematch, went to war with Colby again, and truly looked unstoppable during this time. You add fighting Hamzat on short notice and looking really good in the third, Kamaru Usman is looked at in a way better light than Leon Edwards despite that head kick. So what should Leon do next? I think the only answer, at least for me, would be to fight JDM. Leon either proves he's still championship material or JDM calls next, and I think this would be a really interesting fight, a striking match where I think JDM can push the pace and really make this not boring. But whatever Leon's next moves are, I just find it very interesting that someone who got the belt the way he did, a champion who is a striker with all the skill in the world, was forgotten so quickly. Sure, Bilal and Merab might have the same fallout when they lose the belt, but they never had the potential of being a superstar like Leon. Leon, with the amount of striking skill, athleticism, and really skill in general, could have been an exciting champion to watch, but without that dog and killer instinct, the division moved on in a matter of months. So what do you guys think about Leon Edwards and his championship run, and will he ever come back to the belt? Will he even have really exciting matchups that fans will want to see, and who do you want Leon to fight next? But anyways, of course, thank you guys for supporting, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.